The key turned in the lock for the last time. It wasn't my key anymore. It belonged to the bank now. Every sound echoed with a painful finality, a drumbeat marking the end of a life I once knew. The door clicked shut behind me, a sound as definitive as a judge's gavel. I stood on the porch staring at a lawn I had mowed just a week ago. The world I had built, brick by brick, dream by dream, was no longer mine. It had been taken, dismantled piece by forces I couldn't control. The cold reality hit me, knocking the air from my lungs. This wasn't just a house, it was a kingdom. I was its deposed king. My kingdom was gone. My job, the source of my pride, my income, gone. The respect I once commanded had evaporated like morning mist. Whispers followed me down the street, looks of pity, or worse, looks of judgment. People who once clapped me on the back now avoided my gaze. I had become a ghost in my own town, a cautionary tale parents might tell their children. Failure has a distinct smell, rust and decay. It clings to you, a shroud you can't wash off. I had lost the game, and the board itself was being swept clean. It happens faster than you can imagine. Life can unravel in the blink of an eye. One day, you're on top of the world, planning for the future. The next, you're staring into an abyss. The ground beneath your feet gives way. No warning, a sheer cliff, a brutal drop. I believed in hard work, in playing by the rules. I thought that would build a fortress. But I was wrong. The storm came. My walls, once stone, turned to sand. The sun was setting, casting long, mournful shadows across the yard. Each shadow reached like grasping fingers from a past I could no longer reach. The life I had lived here was now a collection of memories, ghosts haunting empty rooms, laughter, arguments, quiet moments, all trapped inside while I was locked out. The hardest part wasn't losing things. It was losing the person I used to be. He was confident, secure, a provider. Now, standing on the curb, I was a stranger to myself, a man without a map in a hostile, unfamiliar wilderness. I had to walk away. There was nothing else to do. Each step felt heavy, as if my boots were filled with lead. I didn't have a destination. When you have nowhere to go, every direction is the same. The familiar streets of my neighborhood now felt like a foreign country. The friendly waves from neighbors were gone. Now, curtains twitched as I passed. I could feel their eyes on my back, a mixture of curiosity and relief that it was me and not them. The shame was a physical weight, pressing down on my shoulders, bending my spine. I tried to keep my head held high, but it was an impossible battle against gravity. My car was gone. It was sold last week to pay for things I could no longer remember. So I walked. Walking gives you time to think, too much time. Every crack in the pavement seemed to represent a flaw in my own character. Every passing car was a reminder of the mobility and freedom I no longer possessed. I was adrift, a solitary ship with a broken rudder at the mercy of the currents. The world kept moving at its frantic pace, but I had come to a dead stop. People rushed past, busy with their lives. People rushed past, busy with their errands. People rushed past, busy with their purpose. I had no purpose. I was just a man putting one foot in front of the other, with no end in sight. The journey through town was a tour of my own failures. There was the restaurant where I celebrated my last promotion. There was the park where I used to play with my kids. Every corner held a memory, and every memory was a sharp stone under my bare feet. You don't realize how much of your identity is tied to places until they are stripped from you. Without them, you are just a collection of stories with no setting. You become unmoored, floating in a sea of what-ifs and if-onlys. The past becomes a weapon turned against you. I walked until the streetlights flickered on. The day was over, but for me there was no home to return to, no warm bed, no familiar chair. The night offered no comfort, only a deeper darkness to match the one inside me. I was an outcast, banished from the tribe. In the wild, an animal left behind by the pack is as good as dead. It loses its protection, it loses its strength, it loses its very reason for being. I felt that primal fear deep in my gut. I was alone, exposed, despair, fear, hopelessness. I found a bench in a small, forgotten park. It was cold, hard, and unforgiving, a fitting throne for a fallen king. The silence was the loudest thing I had ever heard. In my old life, there was always noise. The television, the hum of the refrigerator, the chatter of family. It was a soundtrack I had taken for granted. Now, the absence of sound was a deafening roar. It filled my head, leaving no room for thought, only for feeling. And the feeling was one of absolute soul-crushing emptiness. The world had put me on mute. My voice, my opinions, my existence, they no longer made a sound. This was a different kind of isolation. It wasn't just being alone, it was feeling invisible. I watched people walk by, their laughter and conversations floating on the night air like fragments from another universe. They didn't see me. Or if they did, they saw a shape, a shadow, not a man. To them, I was part of the scenery. To lose your home and your job is one thing. To lose your place in the world, to become unseen, is a far deeper wound. It's a slow erasure of the self, a fading away until nothing is left. The emptiness was not just around me. It was inside me. It was a hollow space in my chest where my heart used to be. I tried to summon anger, to feel the fire of injustice. But there was nothing. I tried to feel sadness, to let the tears come. But my eyes were dry. All the emotion had been burned out of me, leaving behind only the cold, gray ash of apathy. It's a dangerous state to be in. When you stop feeling, you stop fighting. You accept the cold, you accept the darkness. You begin to believe that this is all you deserve. As the hours passed, the cold of the bench seeped into my bones. The world was asleep, but I was wide awake. The silence was a relentless interrogator. Who are you now? What will you do? Where will you go? Each question was a hammer blow against my fragile state. The foundation of my life was gone. I wasn't just at rock bottom. It felt like I was digging deeper. This was the true test, not the loss itself, but the crushing, silent aftermath. This is where a man either breaks completely or discovers a strength he never knew he possessed. The next morning brought a new kind of horror. It was the garage sale, except it wasn't a choice. It wasn't a cheerful spring cleaning. This was a liquidation. A public auction of a private life, my life. Strangers would soon be picking through the fragments of my past, haggling over items that once held deep, personal meaning. The driveway was littered with the artifacts of a fallen kingdom. Everything I had ever owned was laid bare for the world to see. It was a yard sale of the soul, and I was forced to be the cashier. I stood there as the first cars pulled up. My stomach churned. This was a new level of shame, a public spectacle of my failure. The sturdy oak table where we shared our meals. The bookshelf I built with my own hands. Every item sold was a piece of me being cut away, leaving a raw, open wound. They were vultures circling a carcass, and I was the carcass. They had no idea of the stories held within these objects. A child's first bicycle was just a few dollars of scrap metal. I had to force a smile, answer their questions, make change, and thank them for taking pieces of my history off my hands. It was the most difficult performance of my life. "What a bargain," one woman exclaimed. I just nodded. I was facilitating the dismantling of my own identity, $1 at a time. The shame was a physical force. The crowd grew thicker. A man I didn't know ran his hand over the worn armchair where I used to read stories to my children. He saw fabric. He saw wood. I saw bedtime stories. I saw whispered secrets. He saw a piece of furniture. I saw a vessel of love. A young couple haggled over the price of our old dinner plates. They argued me down by 50 cents a plate. I let them win. The fight had gone out of me. I watched them wrap the plates in newspaper and carry them away. A piece of our family tradition was now destined for a stranger's table. I saw neighbors walk by, some offering a hesitant wave, others quickening their pace to avoid eye contact. Their pity was almost worse than their judgment. A little girl picked up a worn teddy bear. My daughter had cried for an hour when that button came off. I had promised to fix it, but never did. Now another child held this symbol of my broken promise. The sight was a dagger to the heart. How do you put a price on a memory? A box of old vinyl records was sold for $10 to a teenager. He didn't know the story behind each scratch. The parties, the first dances, the heartbreaks they soothed. I handed over the box. I felt a part of my youth slip through my fingers. A woman held up a set of my old tools. "Will you take 20 for the lot?" she asked. These were the tools that built shelves. Fixed leaky faucets, assembled cribs. To sell them felt like an admission of impotence. I was the man whose life was broken beyond repair. I took her $20, and my hands felt empty and useless. The most painful moment came when a man picked up a small, hand-carved wooden bird. My father had made it for me. It had no price tag. "How much for this?" the man asked. I couldn't speak. This wasn't just wood. It was my father's hands. It was priceless. But in my new reality, everything had a price. With a heavy heart and trembling hands, I named a price. He paid it without hesitation and walked away with the last tangible piece of my father. In that moment, something inside me broke. It was the final severing of a tie to the man I used to be. By nightfall, almost everything was gone. I had a pocket full of cash. It felt dirty. It was the blood money from the murder of my past. I started to clean up. A cracked mirror, a single shoe, a book with its cover torn off. They felt like metaphors for how I saw myself. Broken, incomplete, worthless. As I folded the last blanket, my hand brushed against something small and hard. It was a single, smooth stone. My son had given it to me years ago. He found it on a beach and declared it a lucky rock. But as I closed my fingers around it, it was the only real thing in a world that had become unreal. It was a link to a time when I was loved. I slipped the lucky rock into my pocket. This small, insignificant stone was the last remnant. But as I stood there, the weight of it in my pocket was a strange comfort. But nothing is where you start from. Nothing is the foundation. I didn't know it then, but that small, worthless rock was the first stone of a new fortress. The next phase was a conscious choice. It was a purge. There were still things clinging to me. They were the last ghosts of my former life. I realized they were not anchors. They were weights. To truly start over, I had to let go of everything. One by one, I took the items out. A photograph of my family. I stared at it until the faces blurred. I let it go. It felt like a betrayal. But it also felt necessary. Next came the letters. I let the bundle of letters fall from my hands. They joined the photograph in the darkness. It was a brutal, self-inflicted amputation. The last item was the broken watch. Its hands were frozen at 3:17, a perfect symbol of my old life. I let it drop. The clatter it made was a sound of finality. I zipped up my nearly empty backpack. I was at absolute zero, and for the first time, it felt less like a prison and more like a starting line. When you have absolutely nothing to lose, you have absolute freedom. My world reduced to the bare essentials: food, water, shelter. I had spent my adult life accumulating things. I thought they were my fortress. I was wrong. They were walls of a prison. Losing them felt like the end of the world. But in the aftermath, it wasn't an end. It was an escape. The man with nothing has no master? I was lean. I was agile. No longer a victim mourning a loss. A survivor adapting to a new environment. The world tried to crush me by taking everything away. But in doing so, it gave me what I needed to fight back. The freedom of having nothing left to lose. I was finally unburdened. My interactions with the world began to change. The cloak of invisibility I had once felt was starting to fray. As I worked, I was no longer just a ghost. I was a part of a team. I was the new guy, the temp, the hard worker. I learned to talk less and listen more. I learned to work harder than anyone else. Each day I proved my worth not with words, but with my hands and my back. This new identity was a form of armor. It was not the polished, brittle armor of my old life. It was flexible, battle-scarred, and incredibly strong. It was made of humility, forged in the fires of hard labor. When people looked at me now, they didn't see a failure. They saw a worker. This new respect was more meaningful than any I had known before. I started to save money, a few dollars a day, but it was a start. It was a statement that I believed in a future. I was becoming the man who had survived a wildfire and was now growing back stronger in the fertile ash. The loss was not the end of my story. It was the event that had made this new, stronger version of me possible. The man who lost everything no longer exists. I am not him. He was a creature of comfort. His strength was an illusion. When the storm came, he was washed away. Rightfully so. He was not built to last. The man who stands here now is different. Born in the fire of loss, forged in the crucible of hardship. His home is not wood and nails. It's a fortress inside him, a stronghold of resilience and character. No bank can foreclose on it. No storm can tear it down. Built from lessons of the wilderness. Its foundation, humility. Its walls, discipline. Its mortar, purpose. Every day of struggle, every small victory, every moment choosing to get up. Another stone in its walls. It stripped away the non-essential. It forced me to discover what I was made of. Toughness buried beneath comfort and complacency. The loss wasn't the end. It was the beginning of the real story. I did not rebuild the same fragile castle. I built something far more valuable. I built a man who can survive. The world took everything from me and gave me what can't be taken. An unbreakable will, the ultimate freedom, the fortress within. I am not the same man who walked away from that foreclosed house. That man was a king of a fragile kingdom. I am a centurion. I have been tested in battle. I have endured the long march. I have learned to live lean. I have learned to fight hard. My armor is not shiny, it is scarred and dented. Each mark tells a story of survival. My wealth is not in a bank. It is in the strength of my own two hands. It is in the unwavering resolve in my heart. I have returned from the wilderness with the quiet confidence of a man who has faced the abyss and walked away stronger. The future is no longer a source of anxiety. It is simply the next territory to be navigated. I am prepared. I have the skills, the discipline, and the mindset to face whatever comes. It is a portable fortress I carry wherever I go. It is my character. It is my resilience. This is the ultimate security. The message of the centurion is this: do not fear the fall. Do not fear the loss. When life strips you bare, it is not the end. It is a chance to begin again. The emptiness you feel is not a void. It is a clearing. It is an opportunity to build something true, something strong, something that is authentically you. The ruin is not your grave. It is your training ground. It is the foundation upon which you will build your new fortress. So when the walls of your life come crashing down and you find yourself standing in the wreckage, know this: you are at the beginning, the chance to discover the unbreakable strength that lies within you. Losing it all is not the end. It is the beginning of your true strength. It is the foundation for your fortress.